The tax on women's bodies. The forgotten horror of Mulakaram. Imagine being told that the shape of your body is property, that your dignity is taxable, that if you dare to cover your chest, you must pay a price for existing. This isn't a tale from a dystopian novel. This was real. It happened in India. It happened to thousands of women. And it was called Mulakaram, the breast tax. A forgotten law that didn't just rob women of money. It robbed them of freedom, of identity, of humanity. It's the early 1800s in the princely state of Travancore, what we now know as Kerala, India. The air is thick with tropical humidity. Palm trees sway in the coastal breeze, and beneath this seemingly peaceful exterior lies one of the most discriminatory tax systems ever devised. The Kingdom of Travancore wasn't just collecting taxes on land, trade, or property. No, they had something far more sinister, a tax system that classified human beings based on their caste, their gender, and even their anatomy. This is the story of Mulakaram, a tax that would define social hierarchy, destroy lives, and ultimately spark a revolution that would echo through the corridors of history. The caste system explained. To understand Mulakaram, we first need to understand the rigid caste system that dominated 19th century Kerala. Imagine a society where your birth determined everything. Your profession, your clothing, your rights, even how you could carry yourself in public. At the top sat the Brahmins, the priestly class who paid no taxes at all. Below them were various upper castes who enjoyed privileges and respect. And at the bottom, the Nadars, Ejavas, and other communities labeled as lower castes. But here's where it gets truly disturbing. The discrimination wasn't just economic or social, it was literally written on people's bodies through their clothing. Upper caste. Women could wear elaborate garments, jewelry, and what was called the mulakacha, a breastcloth that signified their high status. Lower caste women? They were forbidden from covering their upper bodies in public. Yes, you heard that right. In a twisted logic of social control, being forced to remain partially unclothed was a mark of their inferior status. And if this wasn't degrading enough, the kingdom decided to monetize this discrimination through taxation. The tax system breakdown. Now let's talk about how this horrific system actually worked. The Travancore kingdom had created what they called a poll tax, essentially a head tax that every person from lower castes had to pay when they started. Working usually around age 14, for men this tax was called talakaram, literally head tax, or sometimes mishakaram, mustache tax. But for women, it was mulakaram, the breast tax. Now here's where historical accounts get murky and we need to separate fact from fiction. Popular belief suggests this tax was imposed on women who dared to cover their breasts. But modern historians argue something different, and perhaps even more sinister. According to researchers like historian Manu Pillai, the tax wasn't really about covering breasts at all. Remember, lower caste women weren't even allowed to wear upper garments in the first place. Instead, this was simply a way to identify and extract money from female taxpayers in lower caste households. The name breast tax was just a crude way to distinguish between male and female taxpayers, like saying, this tax is for the men, this tax is for the women. But the cruel irony, the very name itself became a symbol of how the system dehumanized women. Life under the system. Imagine being a woman in 19th century Travancore. You wake up every day knowing that your caste determines not just how you dress, but how you can even carry yourself in public. You can't cover your upper body. That's a privilege reserved for higher castes. You can't wear certain colors, certain jewelry, or even walk on certain roads. And every year, when you turn 14 and start contributing to your family's income through labor, a tax collector comes to your door. He doesn't care about your family's financial struggles. He doesn't care that you're already facing discrimination at every turn. You owe the government money simply for existing as a lower caste woman. The psychological impact was devastating. This wasn't just taxation. It was systematic humiliation designed to keep people in their place. Every payment reinforced the message, you are lesser, you are different, you exist at the mercy of your superiors. But human dignity has its limits. And sometimes, when pushed too far, ordinary people do extraordinary things. The legend of Nangeli. This brings us to the most powerful and controversial part of our story, the legend of Nangeli. According to folklore that has been passed down through generations, there lived a woman named Nangeli in the village of Cherthala in early 19th century Travancore. She belonged to the Ajava community, one of the lower castes subjected to the Mulakaram tax. The story goes that one day, the Pravathiar, the village tax collector, came to Nangeli's home to collect the breast tax. But Nangeli, who had endured years of discrimination and degradation, had reached her breaking point. She refused to pay. What happened next has become one of the most powerful symbols of resistance in Indian history. According to the legend, Nangeli went inside her home, took a sickle, a farming tool, and in an act of defiance that would echo through the ages, she cut off her own breasts. She then wrapped them in a plantain leaf and presented them to the shocked tax collector, saying something along the lines of, "Here is what you came to tax." Nangeli died from blood loss shortly after. When her husband found her, overcome with grief, he threw himself into her funeral pyre and died alongside her. The news of this horrific incident reportedly reached the royal court, and the king, shaken by the extreme nature of Nangeli's protest, abolished the Mulakaram tax. But here's where our story gets complicated, because historians today debate whether this legend is historically accurate or if it's a powerful myth that grew over time. Historical debate. Now I need to be transparent with you about something important. While the story of Nangeli is incredibly powerful and has inspired countless people, modern historians question whether it actually happened as described. Historian Manu Pillai and other researchers argue that several elements of the story don't align with historical evidence. For instance, during Nangeli's supposed lifetime, even royal women and queens in Kerala didn't routinely cover their breasts. It simply wasn't the cultural norm yet. The practice of covering the upper body only became widespread later, particularly under British colonial influence and Victorian moral standards. So the idea that Nangeli was fighting for the right to cover her breasts might be projecting later concerns onto an earlier time period. Instead, these historians suggest that if Nangeli existed, she was more likely protesting against the broader system of caste-based taxation and economic oppression. The breast tax was just one part of a larger discriminatory structure that kept lower castes in poverty. But here's the thing. Whether the story is literally true or not, it represents a very real historical truth about the suffering and resistance of marginalized communities. Sometimes legends carry emotional truths that pure historical facts cannot capture. The real historical context. While we debate the specifics of Nangeli's story, what we know for certain is that the struggle for dignity and equality in Kerala was very real and very bloody. The actual historical movement that challenged dress codes and caste restrictions was called the Channa Revolt, which lasted from 1813 to 1859. This was a decades-long struggle where Nadar women fought for the right to wear upper cloths like higher caste women. The revolt involved real violence, real sacrifice and real change. In 1859, under pressure from the British colonial government, the Travancore king finally issued a decree allowing lower caste women to cover their breasts. Though they still couldn't dress exactly like upper caste women, this was a genuine victory, achieved through sustained resistance, legal pressure and social activism. It proved that discriminatory systems could be challenged and changed. So what can we learn from the story of Mulakaram, whether we view it through the lens of Nangeli's legend or the documented history of the Channa Revolt? First, it reminds us how recently in human history, people were systematically dehumanized based on arbitrary classifications like caste. The Mulakaram tax was abolished less than 200 years ago. That's within living memory of some families. Second, it shows us that discrimination often operates through seemingly mundane systems, taxation, dress codes, regulations that appear bureaucratic but have devastating human impacts. But most importantly, it demonstrates the power of resistance. Whether through Nangeli's legendary sacrifice or the organized activism of the Channa Revolt, Change came because people refused to accept injustice as inevitable. Today, as we face our own struggles for equality and dignity around the world, we can draw inspiration from these stories of courage. Every time someone stands up against discrimination, they honor the memory of those who came before. The story of Mulakaram isn't just history. It's a reminder that the fight for human dignity is ongoing and that ordinary people can create extraordinary change.
The case may be closed, but criminology never sleeps. Like and subscribe at join Criminology and step deeper into the dark with us.